Friends, good morning and welcome to another live stream. This being the SPTV News live part of the channel, where we try to keep you up to date on all the latest shenanigans and atrocities in the criminal cult of Scientology. So, most of today's information comes from Tony Ortega of the Underground Bunker, his Substack. Link in the description box if you'd like to subscribe to him. So, without further ado, let's get into the latest developments. You know, what's interesting before we get started is there's so many suits going on against Scientology by former Scientologists that it's amazing to see, because I'm sure you guys know that follow Scientology. They're one of the most litigious organizations in the world. And something is happening in Scientology lingo that's called reversing the flow. So the exes, God bless them, are now suing the Church of Scientology and reversing the flow. So here's the latest information that's going on with one of these lawsuits. Now, Jane Doe number one, she's a victim of Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson is currently sitting in jail, and he is awaiting sentencing where he is facing a minimum of 30 years. And there's an additional suit that she filed in December, but it just became public about 2.5 months ago. And this is what she's suing over. Let's go over it. So Jane Doe 1 sues Scientology for sex assault at 16 by Sea Org groomer. And by the way, said Sea Org groomer is this guy right here, who, don't you guys think he looks remarkably like David Miscavige? I mean, they've got the same eye color, face, and everything. So this is Gavin Potter, the one being accused. This is David Miscavige. He's also a defendant in the case. And this is Graham Barry, the lawyer who's been taking on Scientology forever and is the process server in this case. So here we go again. On July 31st, we told you about the efforts that attorney Graham Barry and some process servers were making to serve Jane Doe 1's new lawsuit against Scientology and its leader, David Miscavige. When the lawsuit was unsealed in June, we learned that Jane Doe 1, one of the Danny Masterson victims, and Danny Masterson, in case anybody's living in a cave, he is a Scientologist and serial rapist, and Scientologist in good standing and serial rapist, and former actor. He probably won't be acting ever again, of That 70s Show. That's what most people know him from, and The Ranch. And he, as we said earlier, is awaiting sentencing in about a week. Alleges that years earlier she had been subjected to sexual assault as a minor by Sea Org recruiter Gavin Potter, and that she was then given the choice to either go into the Sea Org's prison detail or to marry Potter. She chose, what a choice, right? She chose the latter, but alleges that any sexual contact she had with him subsequently over the years 1991 to 1997, she considered non-consensual. There's 4 defendants that are named in the case besides Potter, and these are the Church of Scientology International, Bridge Publications, Inc., RTC, and Scientology leader David Miscavige, who's been alleged to have said around town recently, nanner, 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 you can't find me. Our readers are familiar with how difficult Scientology makes for Miscavige to be served any lawsuit. That's an understatement. He was served 5 times, by the way, which I'll show you some of that towards the end here. He was never formally named a defendant, for example, in the related lawsuit filed by the Masterson victims, which is known in court as Bixler versus Scientology. However, Miscavige was declared a defendant in a federal Tampa labor trafficking lawsuit. That was Baxter versus Scientology. In February, when that court ruled that the Scientology leader had been intentionally evading process servers, but then that lawsuit was forced into Scientology's religious arbitration, making Miscavige's service superfluous, and that ruling is on appeal. And by the way, in case you guys don't know just how ridiculous that is, the equivalent of going into their arbitration is not only to be able to attempt to hold them accountable in a real court of law, but the deck is stacked so against the person with Scientology's fake world within a world law that you're guaranteed to get zero justice. I'm sure that's obvious to most people, but it's ridiculous that the law doesn't recognize that's basically telling the person trying to get justice to go fuck themselves. At one point in 2021, Miscavige's personal attorney, Jeffrey RIFFER, not to be confused with Reefer, mocked the efforts of the Bixler plaintiffs who were trying to find Miscavige at what is supposed to be his office at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard by saying that, quote, it was public knowledge that Mr. Miscavige was thousands of miles away in Clearwater, Florida. But then, in the Baxter case, Scientology's attorneys mocked those plaintiffs for looking for Miscavige in Florida, saying that, of course, David has been a resident of California for 40 freaking years. Well, now comes Mr. Reefer again, who this week filed a motion to quash service in the new Jane Doe 1 lawsuit, saying that her attempts at substitute service of Miscavige at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard and also 1710 Ivar Avenue, which is the side entrance to the same building, are insufficient. Of course, he would say that. As usual, he's trying to buy himself time so that he can squash the motion. And hey, maybe they can get him into their ridiculous religious arbitration somehow. Quote, Mr. Miscavige was never served with the summons, an operative complaint. Reefer Madness writes, Riffer is someone we've remarked on for years. Most recently, we learned from Yashir Ali's reporting that it was Riffer who accompanied Shelley Miscavige when the LAPD met with her after Leah Remini filed a missing person report in 2013. As Reefer Madness documents go, this latest filing is brief and lacks some of the indignation and bluster of his other efforts, but it's still a fun read. Quote, Plaintiff filed a proof of service in this case, misrepresenting that she had successfully served Mr. Miscavige. This is untrue. Effecting services requires that Mr. Miscavige be served where he lives or where he works. Mr. Miscavige has never been served in this case, neither where he lives nor where he works. Plaintiff's process servers falsely claim that they attempted service at 5 different addresses. No, they did not. Again, link in the description box for all the shenanigans of what it was like for them trying to serve this guy. Mr. Miscavige does not live or work at any of these addresses, nor were any papers left with the person who lives at his home or is in charge of where he works. And obviously, he's not going to say where he lives, so it makes it near impossible to find him. When Leah Remini wanted to send cards or gifts to Shelley Miscavige, she says she was always told to use Dave and Shelley's official address, which is, again, at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard. And that's the Hollywood Guarantee Building, which houses the ridiculous L. Ron Hubbard Life Exhibition on the ground floor, and up on the 11th floor contains the offices of RTC that Dave was the chairman of, hence his moniker, not only as the world's smallest cult leader and the most evasive cult leader, but also known as COB, or chairman of the board. On July 26, Barry's process servers left papers with Scientology employees at both entrances to the building at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard and the aforementioned 1710 Ivar Avenue in an attempt at substitute service. But Mr. Reefer Madness says that, quote, plaintiff did not make reasonably diligent efforts to serve Mr. Miscavige personally. Again, see a link in the description box for what they actually went through to try to find this frickin' guy. The process servers ultimately tried to serve Miscavige at 5 different locations, but, quote, Mr. Miscavige does not live or work at any of these locations, Riffer says. Of course, he makes no comment about where Miscavige does live today. Perhaps he realizes now that his snarling 2021 jab that Miscavige was actually in Florida was not the smartest move. A couple of the places where process servers showed up were Scientology church locations, and Riffer complained that, quote, there are hundreds of churches and missions of Scientology in the U.S., each a separately incorporated religious entity separate from RTC. Mr. Miscavige neither works at those churches of Scientology and is not involved in ministering Scientology services at those church locations. We have pointed this out many times before. It's quite obvious that Miscavige rules over the entire Scientology movement with an iron fist. But when it's legally convenient, his attorneys portray him as an ecclesiastical figure with no connection at all to the far-flung facilities of the church, not dissimilar to what Hubbard would do when they were hunting down his ass back in the day. Quote, plaintiff's purported attempts to serve Mr. Miscavige at these locations served only to harass other religious adherents and to disrupt a holiday celebration, Riffer gripes. Again, it's never good enough for these idiots to just, say something reasonable. They're always the victims whenever they're attacked, and when they're on the offensive, which is almost all the time. Hey, they've never done anything wrong. All right, continuing on. So they apparently disrupted a Hollywood celebration where they were trying to get little kids into their cult with little candies and shit on L. Ron Hubbard Boulevard when David Miscavige was trying to be served. That's the Orwellian translation. And then, yes, he goes there, quote, attempting to serve Mr. Miscavige at a building merely because the building houses the Church of Scientology is no different than attempting to serve the frickin' Pope. Oh, please. They love to compare Dave to the Pope, don't they? Well, he's about the same size, is he not? Multiple times, Riffer points out that 2 years ago, in the related Bixler case, Sea Org lifer Lynn Farney had declared under oath that Miscavige does not live at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard. Mr. Reefer Madness also says that the two employees who encountered the process server at 6331 Hollywood Boulevard and the aforementioned 1710 Ivar either had left and didn't see the papers drop behind them or weren't told they were for Miscavige. Again, that's a lie. See a link in the description box. Either way, he says it was not sufficient for substitute service. Riffer is asking the court, of course, to consider the motion to quash in a hearing on February 15th. The next hearing in this case is scheduled for November 6th. Little bit of information on, so I don't want to just read a bunch of shit. I like to share some personal experience with these people and what we talk about. I knew Gavin Potter fairly well. He was always hanging around Celebrity Center, which is their organization here in Los Angeles. And he always looked super sharp. He's a good-looking man, no homo. And he always had Alexandra Powers next to him. And what I remember, and if any of you guys, by the way, know where the hell Alexandra Powers is, she was one of the really empathic people that we talked about in the Raised in a Secret Society series when she came up. There's a lot of crazy and there's some psychopaths in there, but she was a really sweet person. And I always remember she had this look of fear on her when she was standing next to Potter's right-hand side. And Mr. Potter was always super confident. I got the idea she was totally under his control. And Alexander, I forgive her, was responsible for snookering me to go on the free wins because what she did at the time, I think, well, Gavin was like recruiting people. And what she did is she tried to get people to go onto these events, these special courses that you take on the free wins that are supposed to boost your OT powers. No pun intended. And I just remember that being stuck on that ship for many months, and it was like almost impossible to get off of. And here's what Alexandra, she was doing a movie called, she was going to be a big actress. And it's so sad because I'm totally guessing, but it didn't seem like her purpose. I'm sure she got hornswoggled in there and so at some vulnerable point in her life. And she had just done the movie Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis, and her career was definitely going to take off. And then she's been stuck in there, as far as I know, ever since. So here's a picture of that movie, by the way, just to give you some context. This is Last Man Standing. And it's not the best picture. It's kind of small. And you can see pictures of her. There she is. Look how sweet she is. And a couple more pictures. And here's a little bit of bio on her, which is really kind of sad to read, actually. So Alexandra Kristen Powers, she's an American former actress. God damn it, man. I got to say something here. The reason I'm so stuck on Alexandra or whatever is because I feel like my acting career was completely sabotaged, not to mention the life of the parents that I was supposed to have versus what they became when I got in Scientology. I feel like they kind of stole my dreams in a certain way, not least when I got out and I had to go through the PTSD breakdown. And so, they stole Alexandra's life. This was not her purpose, obviously. It's nobody's purpose to be in the frickin' Sea Org. So her early life, Powers was born in New York City. She grew up in a, quote, artsy, liberal environment on both coasts with her divorced parents. Her father teaches acting. Wow. So she said in the interview that her parents, quote, encouraged me to find my own truth. Jesus. Commenting on her face, she stated, quote, I pray whenever I feel sad, and I believe that whatever is right will work out. In that same interview, she said that her father was Roman Catholic and her mother, Catherine Powers, was interested in metaphysics. Well, there you go. Maybe that's kind of where she was influenced by Scientology, of course, being a fake version of quote unquote metaphysics. Powers' mother wrote for television programs, including Fantasy Island and Charlie's Angels. At the age of 6, Powers announced, At the age of 6, Powers announced her intentions to become an actress. Again, I'll leave a link in the description box to this wiki so you can see her career and more information about her. She's been in 21 Jump Street, Dead Poet Society, and like I said, what I remember her in is that movie with Bruce Willis, Last Man Standing, even though it wasn't that great. And here is a picture of the absolute moron that has no integrity. That is the lawyer of David Miscavige, Mr. Jeffrey Riffer. Again, not to be confused with Reeffer Madness. And that's David Miscavige. And before we kind of close down here, I want to show you some information about what it was like for the poor Graham Berry and Associates to try to serve this frickin' guy. Now, this has been covered elsewhere, so I'm only going to read 2 of the 5 incidences, the first one and the last one. It took them a week to go through these incidences, and we'll just kind of blaze through this here. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them now, and we'll cover them here as we roll out of here. So we're most interested in Miscavige, of course, because his evasion of service became a national story when a Florida court ruled that he'd been dodging process servers intentionally. No, you don't say, and named him as a defendant in this case. Will the same happen here? I'm going to go ahead and guess yes. Will the court rule that Miscavige is still evading service and that the legal team in Jane Doe 1's case has done enough to declare Dave a defendant in her case? We thought you'd be interested in the specific experiences of the process server that Berry and his team hired to try to find Miscavige. He's pretty small, though, so it could be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Let's give him some credit. They were apparently mindful that in the Florida case, Miscavige's attorneys ridiculed efforts to find him there since they said Miscavige has been a resident of California for 40 years. Of course, you dumbasses. So the process server focused mainly on the location that is associated with the midget in legal documents, and that, of course, would be, again, the Hollywood Guarantee Building at 6331 and 710 Ivar. Here's the best excerpts from the dodge efforts of the process server who ultimately did, the legal team frickin' hopes, do enough to declare Dave served. But as we just learned today, that wasn't the case. So here's the first one. The shenanigans are actually even crazier in the middle, but like I said, I don't want to keep you here all day. It's a quick update, so let's just read 2 of them. So this started on June 23rd, and that's at the aforementioned 1710 Ivar. The doors were locked. They have a ring doorbell-like system. I rang the intercom, and there was no answer, to the point that the call disconnected. I rang again and again and again, a total of 10 times. And by the 7th time, they were disconnecting the call. I walked around the corner to 6331 Hollywood Boulevard address of the same building. Same freaking thing happened. Locked doors. I rang a total of 10 times, and no one answered. No surprise, as they're a very dangerous cult. Fuck it. I'm going to read one more here. And another one. So this is June 26th. Shortly after that, as I was approaching the door, a couple of gentlemen were also approaching the door from a location across the street. I tried to enter behind the second person, and he turned around and stopped me. I told him I had something for the legal department. He instructed me to go to the Hollywood Boulevard address. I proceeded to do so. I rang the ring-like bell several times. A young woman approached me without saying anything. I asked her if she worked in the building, and she said no. I continued to ring the bell. There was no answer. She asked if I had a delivery, to which I said yes. She then promptly frickin' walked away. And there is the Ivar building. Isn't it disgusting how much amazing historic property they own that actually not only doesn't serve anything, but harms the shit out of people that are innocently walking down Hollywood Boulevard that might be tourists that get sucked in via their personality test, and attractive people like Alexandra Powers and Gavin Potter, again, no homo, that are placed outside specifically to act as bait. So there it is, the HGB with the Hollywood entrance in front and the Ivar entrance down the block on the left. So there's another attempt on July 4th. That's probably what they were talking about when they're like, how dare you interrupt our festivities? We had one on July 14th, and then I'll just read you the last one here. So July 20th, 9 a.m., 6331 Hollywood Boulevard. Substitute service to John Doe, Caucasian man, mid to late 50s, 5'7", 145 pounds, light complexion, dark eyes, balding, dark hair, wore glasses. Stand by here for 1 second. Okay. He was about to enter the building, but turned around when he noticed me behind him. And by the way, all these people working at that location, as well as the Florida location, etc., they would definitely be notified to be on guard and how to handle people trying to serve Miscavige. They would be very aware that he would be being served. So I told him he was being subserved on behalf of David Miscavige and dropped the documents in front of him. I think I actually skipped a sentence here. So Caucasian man, mid to late 50s, 5'7", 145 pounds, light complexion, dark hair, balding, dark hair, wore glasses. He was about to enter the building, but turned around when he noticed me behind him. I told him he was being subserved on behalf of David Miscavige and dropped the documents in front of him, and he left the documents there and walked away around the corner to the Ivar entrance. My bad. There's one more here. Let me make sure that there's only 5. So let me make sure that I got the right one here. Okay. So here we go. Again, this is from the Underground Bunker. Link in the description box if you'd like to sub to him. Shortly after the videos are posted, I always put the links to all the information covered in the videos. July 20th, 9 a.m., 6331 again, Hollywood Boulevard. Substitute service to John Doe, Caucasian man, mid to late 50s, 5'7", 145 pounds, light complexion, dark side. What the fuck, man? Is this the same one? Oh, okay, my bad. July 20th, 9:10 a.m. I'm getting so sick of saying these same numbers. You guys get it. It's 1710 frickin' Ivar. Now we have a security guard who's a Hispanic male, late 20s, 5'8", 160 pounds, light complexion, dark hair parted to the side, dark eyes. Thank you for the detail. I asked him if he could direct me to the mailroom or legal department. I have legal documents to serve David Miscavige. He said you will have to serve the agent. I informed him that Miscavige is being sued as an individual and his address is here. I announced that I was substitute serving him with the summons and complaint on behalf of David Miscavige. I tried to hand the documents to him, but he stated that he could not take them, so I dropped them at his feet. And remember how they said that they claimed that that the person didn't see him, didn't hear anybody drop him or anything. You know what's going to be fantastic? I really think that this cult, during my lifetime, assuming I live long enough, will actually somehow be disbanded, either in the way of less people coming in and slowly dying out. But the best option would be for them to be held criminally accountable for the 7 decades long abuses that they've done to people, splitting up families, all the crimes, the covered up murders, everything that we know about. And all of these beautiful buildings, all this trauma, all this silliness that David Miscavige does, all the wasted time of judges, all the acting like children, all like there's literally nothing good that comes out of this. I really can't wait for that day. And it will be absolutely amazing to see. Sorry for the ramble. I didn't expect this to be emotional at all, but God damn it. Every time I do these videos, especially Gavin Potter and Alexandra and that Ivar building, it just reminds me and brings me back. Groomer, good morning. Doug, would you consider doing an episode of, oh yeah, Kenya, I think you posted this earlier, right? Kenya, the Australian Scientology ripoff, and the weird new age cult, Love Has Won. Seriously, dude, check those cults out. I will, Groomer. They are so fucked. Tell you what, I'll check them out since I have the information. And if they, if I think that they'll appeal to people and it's interesting, yeah. And that's a good idea, Gur, because I would like to, I mean, we do talk about other things branching off from Scientology, but it would be nice to cover other groups, the wider world at large. And sometimes it's fun to talk about other things other than Scientology. Good morning, Goldie. Thanks for all the help as usual. You're up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Okay, it doesn't look like you guys have any questions. I don't want to keep you here forever. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon. And we're going to leave you with the midget himself and a small example of all the damage this guy has caused over multiple decades. Take care, my friends.
Hard physical labor and intense ideological study are used to break the subject's will. Or is that the truth?